I started working with Annie Joy and sitting down and talking to her and talking about his history, talking about who he was as a person and, how maybe best to represent him and spending time out at Corranderk, spending time out on his country and going to his grave and sort of just hanging out in that area just to try and get an idea for the country. And a whole number of ideas popped up in relation to him, but it was that process of somehow distilling them down into one artwork. I started looking at a multiple series of works, and that idea of the multiple was really to represent all those different ideas. He was an amazing father who was completely heartbroken when he lost his son. He was an amazing leader. He was a really compassionate friend. He was an amazing political activist, but he was also someone who knew all of his traditional knowledge. So it was all these sort of things rolled up in one man, which is why he was such an amazing leader and a fantastic artist. And so to sort of choose these sort of light boxes, these individual light boxes, was in one way to sort of perhaps representing all those different facets of his life. But in another way, they started to represent the 5 different the 5 different groups that make up the Kulin nation. So because he sort of became a leader for the whole Kulin people. So that idea of referencing those 5 groups within those 5 boxes came out of that. The whole idea of making lines and working with line is something which I think is really dominant within the southeast. So, New South Wales, Victoria, that idea of working with carved lines. So people would traditionally either carve possum skins or carve shields or carve trees or carve rock engravings. And often those those images would be linear because of the process of carving creates a linear design. 2 or 3 of the designs are literally taken from his artworks, so possum skin designs. One work is quite a sort of quintessential, I guess, Victorian design that I guess a lot of Kooris from Victoria area would identify very strongly with shield designs. And then the other one is a design that's really special to me. It was one of the first times I got to go overseas, and I was in the British Museum's archive, and I found a club that came from just east of Bathurst, which is where my family's meant to come from. So it's kind of this amazing connection I got to have with this club, and it's got this amazing design, which has really always stuck with me for a really long time. And so that's the other one that's thrown in there into the mix as well. The work also developed quite strongly with 2 architects at Cox Architects in Melbourne. I was really lucky to work with these guys really closely in the design and development of the work, and also had a great sort of crew of people manufacturing the objects as well. So they're really slick and they're really minimal, and a lot of the idea about getting architects involved was also because I was interested in the building, the NGV, and there's this strange link. The whole project was meant to be this bizarre link between somehow making Barak intrinsically linked with the NGV, which had some problems inherently, embedded within it, because, the same time as Barak was fighting for his country, and for his culture, this white institution was growing up. And his work, he wasn't really collected, and he wasn't, part of that mainstream dialogue that this institution stands for. So it was really a bit awkward to try and then somehow take him and replace him back into this institution, which is what the whole, conversation was about. What interested me was a position in the building, one of the few positions in the building that you can stand and actually look out onto the river. But for this project and Barak and looking at his country, the river was such an important link. And also what's great is at that point you're looking through the Aboriginal gallery, so you're looking through this kind of, permanent dedicated space to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture to the river. So it's this really important sightline. And the other thing that I was really connected with was it's a transitional space. So it's and Barak and his work and what he did was all about transitioning people and all about moving us to different levels and shifting our perspectives and, you know, taking us to hopefully a better place. And I spoke a lot to Annie Joy about that, and, you know, she was really interested in talking about that idea of moving forward and bringing histories together, and that this was an opportunity to do that. But it's been interesting, that link. And so the first work that I actually wanted to do was sitting down and, because the real link between the NGV and Corranderk or Barak is actually the river. So the first project I proposed was to plant the whole river out with wattle and have this corridor of wattle, because Barak predicted his own death. He said that he would die when the wattle bloomed. The idea was to create this memorial which would keep reminding us of this history and keep reminding us of him and this story, and it wasn't just a static artwork that you know, sat like a bronze bust or something in a park. It was this idea of somehow creating something that was living and changing that people could connect with. And I'm happy that people maybe see the shifts or changes in the artwork as something else. They don't have to read it as what it was intended to be, but as long as people are kind of engaging with it and continuing investing in that history and that old man and what that man had to give all of us.